before. Can you tell me your first impressions of being a kid in the Olympic?
All right, so first of all, how great was that documentary? It was really good, right? I grew up at that Olympic Auditorium, running around there, trying to idolize my uncle next to me, my father, my other uncle Hector, and all of the wrestlers. And I remember those little dressing rooms and running around those little catacombs, and they looked so big back then. You know, I would just run around and play in the ring, and be in the dressing rooms, and I was always just in awe of the whole thing, and I just knew the Olympic was very special as a kid. It was I don't know how I knew it, I just knew it. So years later, I made my debut in 1993 there at the Olympic Auditorium, just by chance. And that's when it had been redone at the end with they covered the marquee and kind of revamped it and put some money into it, and that's kind of the last time I was there.
Well, what's so interesting to me is your father came around at a time in which things were changing in the city so much and changing for Olympic wrestling. It was a moment where the previous generation, the Blassies, the Tolos, that era of wrestlers had kind of run their course, and also the TV contract with KCOP was gone, and the new contract was Channel 34, the Mexican Spanish language station. So they needed a hero who could represent the Mexican people and Mexican American people, and your father fit the bill.
Right. Well, my father was able to speak both languages, English and Spanish, fluently. So he was a good-looking young kid, knew how to be a good baby face, knew how to sell, and really learned on the job. He was good, but got much better as he was there. And they brought in another young heel in Roddy Piper, and together those two really revamped and brought back the crowds back to the arena. And a lot of it was with Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper was so instrumental in bringing the fans back. And it's one of those, like in Star Wars, you can't have Luke Skywalker without Darth Vader. Well, you couldn't have my father as the good guy without the bad guy, the Darth Vader, the Roddy Piper. And it was just magic, those two getting together.
Yeah, it seemed like, that's what brought the family in, right? Mando, it was your dad and your brothers, and with Roddy mentioned when we interviewed him, which was one of the last interviews that he did, was how it was often the whole family against Piper. Piper was the bad guy to the whole family.
Sure. It all started there in El Paso because we controlled the TV across the border in Ciudad Juarez, and we grew up on it. I was an announcer for one time, and my dad had his own gym, his own wrestling arena, and we would just go there and wrestle before we knew it. Chavo came of age, and then he got me into it. My dad got us into it. So we were already groomed. And this is why Chavo fit the big spot, the empty spot that was needed at the time. As you mentioned, the television had switched. They lost Channel 13, and Channel 34 was available, and that was in Spanish. But at the same time, they wanted to keep the English going. So they needed this one guy that could speak fluent Spanish and English. And that was my brother. It was a thing of God that he was there at the right time. And it just happened that he was going to Japan. He was a coach, like I said, and it was a summer, so he had to make up for those 2 months that he had nothing to do, he was going to wrestle to Japan. And he had a family already. He had Chavito and Tori and Nancy and a house to pay for. So he's.
And they had just come in like second in the state championships in Texas. My dad was a wrestling coach there, amateur wrestling coach in high school, and he had all of his seniors except for one returning. So they were favored to win the state championships. After he went to Japan, they offered him a job to come here and wrestle at the Olympic Auditorium, and he had to choose, and he had to tell all of his students that he couldn't come back, and he had to take this opportunity. And literally, he came for a month, and then moved my family down from El Paso for 6 months, and that was it. And we never left. We never left.
It's amazing because it really